so we did this study because we're trying to help. We're trying to sort of, measure the impact of what's going on in all of our lives and help the good people like you that work on college and university campuses just give you some data that you can that can help you understand the problem and possibly some of the solutions. And I want to say right as we start off here today that we're just so appreciative, thankful that we get to work in this great industry. We think that higher education is an essential service. We feel really privileged to play a small role in helping colleges and universities thrive. And we think that you should be very proud of the work that you're doing because, our college campuses are educating all those doctors and nurses out there, and we're also going to be the ones who find a cure for this deadly disease. And so it's, all the work that we're doing here is so important, and it's really important to us to, I got to stop talking, I'm going to get myself upset. So the number one question we're getting about this study is, are we going to replicate it? And the answer to that is most likely yes. We're trying to figure out when is going to be the best time to do that and, when it's going to help the most. But so stay tuned because we might be able to update this data. Things are changing so quickly that we think we could have very different findings even today from the study that we feel that just, we closed it out just 9 days ago. So let me take you in here and show you what we did. So we really targeted two populations, high school seniors and current college students. So the high school seniors, it's really important to understand who this population is. These are current high school students who, before the virus outbreak, were planning to go to a four-year college or university, a residential four-year college or university. So we wanted to eliminate students who were planning to go to an online college or a community college and really just limit it to those who are planning to go to a four-year school. So almost 600 of them completed the survey. The current college students are only freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who are attending residential four-year colleges and universities in the United States. And we had just over 500 of them complete the survey. Normally, when you're doing any study like this, you're looking for a sample size of at least 400 to get a representative sample and to get your margin of error within plus or minus 5%. And so ours is higher than that, a better sample size and a tighter margin of error. So that's good. So data collection period is important. So we started collecting our data on Wednesday, March 25th. And for context, that was the day before the unemployment claims number was released on Thursday. Those numbers come out every Thursday morning. And remember that first Thursday, 2 weeks ago, when we first saw the over 3 million jobless claims that Thursday. So we were collecting our data right around that period, went into the field the day before that, and then took it out 5 days later before the second week, right, which is when the claims went up to over 6 million. And then we just got those numbers again this morning that we're back up over 6 million. So that's why we think replication of this study is going to be pretty important because things are changing so rapidly, and we want to really sort of monitor what's going on and give you data that's going to help you. So one of the things I am going to do with you today is give you a little bit of data that's not in the report. We wanted to give you a reason to come to the webinar. And so I'm gonna mention some data verbally that's actually not in the report that we published on Tuesday. And we don't feel like you have to take notes or anything. We're doing two things right now. We're recording this webinar and we'll make that available to all of you. And we're also, anything that I say during this presentation that's not in the final report, we are sending you those data points in the follow-up email. So don't feel like you have to take notes or you're not gonna miss anything because we'll make sure you have that on paper as a follow-up to this. So these numbers are, I think, pretty obvious. It was about half of the high school seniors that we talked to in the current college, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that said that their family financial situation is being affected by COVID. This is probably the number one reason I think we need to replicate this is because we think it's going to go up and possibly significantly. And I'll warn you, there's some scary findings in this study, but there are a couple of little glimmers of hope, we think. So I'm going to try to focus on those too. Okay, so we got to stop here and talk about this real quick. So I mentioned that all of the high school students that we talked to said that, before COVID, they were planning to go to a 4-year college or university. So they had to answer yes to that question to even screen in to the survey. And then the first question that they got once they screened in was, are you still planning? And that was a yes or no question. So it wasn't like I'm highly likely to still go to a 4-year, or unlikely, or it wasn't like a squishy metric. It was a flat out yes or no. And we wanted to do that because we wanted to have a real crystal clear number about how people's plans were changing. And one thing we did in this study too that was different than some of the others that we've seen come out is that we attributed everything, tried to isolate, things that were very specifically attributed to COVID. So the way we worded the questions really tied it back to that. And so there are two ways, depending on whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, there are two different ways to look at the data on the screen, right? I mean, if you want to spin it positive, you'd say, well, this is great. 89% of those kids who were planning to go to a 4-year school before the outbreak are still planning to go to a 4-year school. That's one way to think about it. The other way is that 1 in 10 aren't, that's just a flat no. I was planning on, and now I'm not planning on. It's about 11% of kids. It's essentially 1 in 10, which is a scary number because if 1 in 10 kids don't show up in the fall, that could be devastating for higher education. And, over 1 million kids, right, enroll as first-time, full-time freshmen at 4-year institutions every fall, thereabouts. And if 100,000 of them don't come, that's going to be a problem. So we're worried about this number too, because we think it may go up. It may have already dramatically gone up. So that's something, that we'll continue to monitor. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, we asked these kids who were still planning to go, the 89% that were still planning to go in the fall, if they had decided where they wanted to go to school or if they were undecided. And you can see about 3/4 of them had already decided. So those were sort of, like the equivalent of a deposit in most cases. And then about 1/4 are still undecided. And it's really those undecided kids who were the most at risk. If you've read the study already, you can see that that's the population that is most influenced by what's going on with COVID and the most unsure about whether or not they will attend college in the fall at all. That if you take that 26%, well, we'll talk about them in a minute, but one of the other things I wanted to mention on this slide is if you think about that 1 in 10 kids who has changed their mind and is not going to enroll as a 4-year student this fall, those kids, that one kid, which could be, over 100,000 kids, they split kind of evenly over what their plans are going to be. About 1/3 of those kids say that they're going to go to a 2-year college instead of a 4-year college. About 1/3 say that they're going to go to enroll in some sort of an online degree program, so not a traditional residential program, but something online. And then the other 1/3, sadly, say they're not going to go to college at all. So that's what this study showed at this particular point in time. So if we come here, what we asked the high school students next was, how likely is it that you won't go to college at all because of the COVID outbreak? And we gave these options, highly likely, unlikely, too soon to say. So, the population we're really looking at is this, 20% of kids at the bottom who say they're likely or unlikely to not go to college at all, right? So about 1 in 5 kids are saying that that's the case for them. What's interesting is if you saw the Art and Science Group study that was published, they collected their data about 5 days. I think they closed their data collection about 5 days before we opened ours. And our questions weren't worded exactly identically, and the populations were just ever so slightly different. But they actually, we're finding here that 1 in 5 kids is saying theirs was 1 in 6 on almost an identical question. And so you can see what that means is that we went from 1 in 6 to 1 in 5 in just a very quick period of time, looking at a pretty parallel question on a study that's conducted of a very, very similar population. Now, if you put the highly likely, the likely, and the too soon to say all together, you've got about 31% of the population that really can't commit to saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to college in the fall. And one of the things that I hate to report on, but will, so you understand it, is that when you break out Caucasian students from students of color, that students of color are even more at risk, unfortunately. There's actually a 10 percentage point difference in students of color and Caucasian students, with the students of color saying that it's more likely or too soon to say that they won't go to college in the fall. So that's one of those stats that we'll put in our follow-up communications with you. Okay. All right. Okay, so if we go here, now we're looking at just those students who have decided where they want to go to school, right? This is the 89% who have, say they're still planning to go to a traditional four-year college, and then the 3/4 of those who say that they've decided. We wanted to know of those decided kids. These are sort of like the equivalent of your deposits, right? Like how likely is it even that kid, right, might change their mind about where they want to go to school. And so it's 14% saying it's likely or highly likely that they will change their mind. And then if you add in that too soon to say, that makes about 24% that we sort of say is the at-risk population, even in your deposit pool, right? The interesting thing about this number, unfortunately, that 24% goes up for students of color. It goes up for students who have GPAs of about a B, self-reported GPAs of about a B or lower. So kids who maybe aren't the highest academic ability, those numbers go up, that they might change their minds. Interestingly enough, too, the numbers go up if the student said that they're planning to attend a public institution in their own state. So what that means is that percentage of students that even in your deposit pool who are at risk for changing their mind about attending your institution, if you're at, that 24% is actually only 16% if the student is planning to attend a private institution or a public institution outside of their home state. So it gives you a little sense of a better sense of who is exactly at risk. Okay. Hey, Malachi, because I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat and the folks who might have questions. Do we have any sort of important questions coming in that I should pause and try to answer?
No questions yet, but just to reiterate, you're free to use the chat feature to ask any questions, or if you click on participants, on the right-hand corner, there's a hand raise feature. So as Elizabeth goes through this, if you have a question or an insight or comment that you want to make, feel free to use either of those. Actually, Elizabeth, we just got a question about re-explaining the in versus out-of-state finding.
Yeah, let me go back. We'll make sure that we put that in the follow-up email so you'll be able to see that data point. And we'll get the exact numbers, but this 24% that you see on the right-hand side of your screen of decided high school seniors who say they might change their mind about the college they want to attend, that percentage goes up if the student is planning to attend an in-state public college or university. And it goes down if the student says that they're planning to attend a private college or university or a public university that is outside their home state. So I hope that clarifies that, and we will make sure to put that in the follow-up email so you can look at it on paper. Okay. So here we go with communications. This is interesting. You all know we study high school students and college students all the time, and I can tell you for sure, it's pretty rare for us to get a high school senior who says, colleges need to send me more information, right? They say, oh my gosh, the colleges are sending me so much information, right? I can't read all the emails. I'm getting text messages, I'm getting phone calls, I'm getting stuff in my snail mailbox. So usually they say they're getting too much. And so we saw this and we thought, oh my gosh, this is, the first time that students are saying, send me more, right? 40% of high school seniors who have decided on the school say they're actually not getting all of the information that they want about how COVID might impact their enrollment. So the role that we play now more than ever in making sure that they're getting the right information is very, very important. And actually that 40% is higher among Caucasian students, lower among students of color, interestingly enough, and higher among Caucasian students. Someone's asking online if we split out that public in-state stat by flagships and regional campuses. We didn't. The sample size, we didn't even ask that question. If they, what about the type of institution they were planning to attend. But it's great to see that question because we can think about how we may be able to work that into the replication. And the other question here is, for this survey, is a decided student one who has actually deposited? We can't answer that definitively. The answer is probably yes. We just asked them, have you decided where you want to go, right? So you can, they're sort of the equivalent of your deposited students, but we didn't necessarily word it that way. One other question while we've got it is, do we have data on the types of high schools that the students are currently attending? Malachi, do you know the answer to that? Did we ask, did they attend a public or a private high school? I think we did. I'm 99% sure we did. Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know for a fact. Let me look into it.
Okay. We'll find out about that. Oh, Jason Simon's jumping on saying we did. So we do know that, and great question. We'll look at to see if there's some significant differences there, and report those out to you as well. Okay, get back in here. All right, this stuff is so interesting. So we asked the prospective students, what kind of information they wanted to get, and we put in a bunch of options here that we were hearing, things that you all have been offering. I was actually surprised to see observing an online class come up, at the top with a virtual campus tour. I mean, virtual tour makes complete sense, but fascinating to see that the kids actually want to get in and observe an online class. One of the things that we're doing, in addition to this, quantitative survey, is we're interviewing high school kids on Zoom, just like this, and asking them, all about the process that they're going through. And I'll tell you what, I interviewed three high school seniors just yesterday afternoon myself, just because I want to talk to them. I just have this urgent need to, get in their brains and figure out, how are they making the decisions? What's affecting them? And this one young woman, I said, well, what do you need from colleges right now? And she just right like that said, I would love to get into a biology class, or, something related to, what I'm going to be studying. And I think it's for two reasons. It's not only to understand, get a sense of your institutions, but, they're worried that they're going to have to start online. And I think they're really interested to figure out, what's that going to be like, and how can I get myself a little bit more comfortable with it. And then the second thing she said she wanted was a really good virtual campus tour. Those are definitely things to be thinking about, but, across the board, they're pretty high levels of interest in all this stuff. But it was interesting to see those two come up at the top. One of the things that we're also hearing from students about the virtual campus tours, just as an FYI, is that, there's virtual tours and then there's virtual tours, right? And there's, the ones that are like the static rotating shot of your empty campus are not the ones they love the most, right? The ones they love the most are the ones that have probably been recently produced on an iPhone, where students are walking around, campus, yes, is empty, but they're walking around saying, look, this is usually like this and usually like this. They don't care so much about how professionally produced they look, but they really want to, try to get a sense of campus life. And they're telling us they really have an even interest in, really trying to understand what campus life is going to be like, and then, what their academic life is going to be like. Answering a few questions here, just jumping in. Oh, I think our folks are jumping in and answering most of these questions right in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. So this one's a little bit heartbreaking. We asked kids to give us just one word that they would use to describe how they feel about their campus closing. And, in a way, this makes me feel good, because it shows that, how emotionally attached students are to their campuses. I mean, you wouldn't say that you're, disappointed, annoyed, frustrated, upset, stressed, sad, heartbroken, if you didn't love the school that you're attending. And so I don't like it that they feel this way, but I think this does show the emotional connection that that college students have with their institution. So that's what we got to try to recover from. So speaking of the current students, this was a little bit worrisome. The relatively large group of students, right here, about 41%, saying that their opinion of their school had gotten worse or a lot worse because of because of COVID. one really interesting finding about this is that 41% that say their opinion of their school has gotten worse is actually higher in the Northeast and the West, which is fascinating to me because those are the regions of the country that responded first, right? I would think that if you responded first, you'd have a better, or at least the same opinion. But and we're going to see that again on the following slide about the Northeast and the West. So we'll make sure that you get that data. It'll be something really interesting to benchmark. But I thought that was a really interesting, surprising kind of a finding. So on the left-hand side, if you look at this is a rating of how college students feel their institution has handled the outbreak, right? So we're, of course, sort of putting together the fair and the poor, right? And looking at that, 38%, 37% or so that are, sort of saying that they feel their colleges handled that fair or poor. If we go on the right-hand side, now we're specifically isolating communications because that's the role that we all play, right? So we've got about 25%, 1 in 4, who rate their institution's communications about COVID fair or poor. That's another one, that chart on the right-hand side, that percentage that rate their institution's communications about COVID as fair or poor is higher in the Northeast and the West than it is in the South or the Midwest, which again, punishment for acting early, I guess, because those are the regions of the country who started communicating first and started shutting things down first. But that's what the study showed. Now here's why that's important, because there's a relationship between the change in the opinion of the school based on how they rate communications in particular. If you look at that 67%, the exact meaning of that number is that 67% or two-thirds of the kids who, current college students who rate their institution's communications about COVID as fair or poor, say their opinion has gotten worse of their institution. So there's a real strong correlation there between our communications and then perceptions of our institution, which is just a super important thing to understand. Okay, so how does online instruction compare to the in-person instruction you received at your school? You can see here it's 63% of current college students who say it's worse. Nobody's saying it's better. So I think we're hearing that most of your faculty hate this transition that they've gone through, and so do the students. The interesting thing is too here, this goes way up when you just isolate freshmen. It's 70% of freshmen who rate online instruction worse than in-person instruction, but that's only 54% for juniors in college. So it's really the freshmen who are having a much more difficult time adjusting to online than even upper class students. So that was a really interesting finding. It was actually the northeastern region of the country that also was real high. It goes up to 71% of college students who attend a school in the Northeast that say online is worse. That was interesting. It's also much higher if the student is attending an institution outside of their home state. The figure for online being worse goes up. So we'll make sure that you get those findings. This is an interesting one. I mean, I think everyone, as soon as all the schools started going online, people started saying, oh gosh, these kids they're gonna start taking all these classes online. They're gonna fall in love with it. They're gonna realize it's a really easy way to complete their degree, and they're never gonna come back. I don't think that's what this is suggesting. And certainly the conversations we're having with the students are that they want to get back in the worst possible way. So we can only hope that possibly this temporary transition to online instruction is only going to lead to a resurgence of interest in the traditional in-person, on-campus, residential college experience that I think many of the institutions who are attending today are offering and sort of really and believe in passionately. So that's my positive prediction for the day, right? Is that they're I call me Pollyanna, but there could possibly be a real resurgence in interest in the traditional four-year college experience, right? Okay. So how likely are you to return to your current college or university in the fall term. We had 62% saying highly likely. If you add in the 24%, you've got 86%. You know, those numbers again are going to be really interesting to see, you know, how they change over time. If you put this too soon to say and the unlikely and the highly unlikely together, you have 14%. This is another one that varies for students of color. That 14% figure goes up to 19% for students of color. It goes down to 9% for Caucasian students. So your students of color may be more at risk for being a retention problem than other segments, unfortunately. And so this is obviously a really important number that we need to keep watching as well. Okay, so we've got some key insights here, and but I want to sort of look at some of these questions in the group chat. I think that everyone has been answering the questions, but Jason or Malachi or Meredith, is there anything you want to sort of bring up and discuss as a group? Anything we haven't answered or need to talk about with the entire group?
We had a question from much earlier, Elizabeth, on thoughts on how the in versus out of state public-private stat may be related to scholarships.
We don't know. One of the things we did not ask is, and that would be a great thing to add to the replication, is whether or not the student is receiving financial aid from the institution. So good question. We'll think about that for the next study. So we can't really answer that. Although we do, obviously, with this, you know, there's got to be this high correlation between the kids who say, and we can do this, the kids who are saying that their family's financial situation is being affected by COVID, we can cross that with some of the other data points in the study. So we'll make sure to do that. There's a question in here I'm already seeing is, did you break anything out for seniors who tend to be pretty upset about commencement? We actually, specifically because of commencement, we didn't even include seniors in our study. We only surveyed college freshmen, sophomores, and juniors because we really wanted to try to capture sort of what was going to happen with enrollment in the fall. And since the seniors can't re-enroll, they're hopefully going to be gone and hopefully get jobs. So we didn't even include them in the summer, I mean, in the study. And I think that would have sort of thrown everything off because you're right, they are pretty upset about commencement. Though, you know, one of the things that we're thinking about doing as a webinar in a couple of weeks, everything's changing real quick. Who knows if we'll even get to this, but we're thinking about doing a webinar that sort of showcases some of the really great things that colleges are doing to, you know, shift their marketing and communications and their strategies to respond to all everything that's going on. And there are some fantastic stories about what people are planning for commencement and how they're planning to take some of their traditions and move them to a digital setting, and lots of really great stories there that we want to be able to put out into the world and share with everyone. So look for that. Hopefully we'll be doing that soon.
Elizabeth, we had a question about differences between public regionals and public flagships. And I just wanted to respond to everybody and say that we did not slice the current student data by those differences, although we could potentially look at that. I think it'll be just a question of how many from each of those categories we actually have, if it's meaningful data or not. And we are not able to do that difference by prospects because we didn't have them actually tell us the institution that they had either deposited at or were planning to attend.
Right, right. There's another comment here about parents. We obviously talked about studying parents too, and we decided to keep the first study focused on the high school seniors and the current college students. We had planned to do parents next, but I think what we'll do probably is replicate this rather than adding in parents, because I think seeing the differences from you know, this period from March 20th to 25th and doing that again maybe in a couple of weeks will probably be even more interesting than getting new data on parents. But yeah, they're super interesting population as well. Okay. Aw, Someone just said, can I just say right now, this data is incredibly helpful. Thank you. Thank you. We hope that you can, take it around and show it to other people on your campus. And I also want to tell everybody something. So if anybody is going to conduct a survey of their own prospects or their own current students, and you want to replicate anything that we've done, we will give you our data and our survey instruments if you want to do that, because any study like this one, you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, I'm Rochester Institute of Technology, this is probably all different if you're talking about my prospects and my students, and that is absolutely true. This is 30,000 foot view data representing a huge national sample of these populations. And so I know it would be so helpful for all of you to have this data on your, your own narrow slice of the pie. So if you decide to study that population in any way and you want our raw data, we'd be happy to give it to you so you can run the statistical test on it all. And we'll give you our survey instruments as well. So you're all going to have follow-up emails from us, so you'll know how to get in touch with us. And if that would be helpful to anyone, we'd be happy to provide it. I wanted to make sure to mention that before anybody left. Okay. Oh, interesting. There's some interest. David Rowe. Hey, David. Relative to seniors, it says it would be interesting to see if there's an increase in students taking advantage of fifth-year free guarantees. That would be a good question to do in a follow-up. What we'll do is we'll make a note of everything that y'all are putting in the group chat, because I think it'll help us write a better survey instrument. As you can imagine, we wrote this survey instrument like in an afternoon, and as is the case with any good study, I would have written it differently if I thought about it for 5 more minutes. But when we replicate, we'll take all your good comments here and try to make it even better. One of the questions I got this morning, Malachi and I did an interview. I'll be interested to hear what you'll have to say about this. Malachi and I did an interview with Forbes this morning. They picked up the article in Inside Higher Ed about the study and called, and we did an interview with them today. And their big question was about deferring. Will students be able to just defer their enrollment for a whole year? And so that's going to be something we'll be really interested to ask you guys about, and about how that will be handled on campuses. Because you can't let half your freshman class defer for a year, right? And have a skinny class for fall 2020 and then a huge one for 2021. So we'll be real curious, and if anybody wants to chat about that and tell us how you're dealing with that potential wave of students who might defer, it would be really interesting. I can tell you, I've got an N of 4 right here in my own household. I have 2 college sophomores in the house who are home from Elon and Franklin and Marshall College, and I've got 2 college-bound high school seniors. One's going to Seattle University as her first choice. The other one's going to Penn State. First of all, my son, who's who's at Franklin and Marshall, I keep hearing him scream from upstairs, I can't learn differential equations online. Every day he's screaming, I can't do Diffie-2s online. And so he can't wait to get back to his campus. And the 2 girls who are going off, who are high school seniors and going off in the fall, I'll tell you what, they got over the whole idea of missing their last quarter in high school like that. They even got over no prom, no graduation, no beach week, all that stuff in about 24 hours. But if your campuses don't open in the fall, they will lose their minds. I mean, they will lose their minds. They want to go so bad. I mean, if there's any silver lining in all of this, I can only think that it's that these kids are just so hell-bent on getting to your campuses and being a part of the residential traditional 4-year experience. They want it in the worst way. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I'm hearing it from a lot of the kids we're interviewing as well. All right, what else do we got here? Should we answer more questions or should we let everybody go? What do you think, Malachi and Jason? Oh, domestic international, Ken. We only interviewed, there's a question here, you may have covered this, but are the data sliced by domestic or international? We only interviewed kids in the US, so it's completely exclusively limited to kids in the US. Another question here about how many kids did we reach out to? We actually used a panel for this, and so we had almost 600 kids who were high school seniors respond, and just over 500 who were current college students respond. That's in the report. Before we'll sort of let it go there because I want to let everybody get back to work. But one of the things I want to mention is that we're going to be doing we got to find a way to keep ourselves busy. So we're going to be doing virtual office hours here at Simpson-Scarborough. You're going to be getting some information about it in your follow-up email. We're going to do these 10 virtual office hours. It's totally free. We're going to do them every week with senior people in our company about like pressing issues that you guys want to hear about. So we're going to send you a link if you want to participate in something like this and get you to put topics in that you want to discuss, so we can make sure we've got the right people on the call. Like if you want to talk about, you know, video or web or social or, you know, whatever it is, we'll make sure we've got the right people on the phone to give you ideas. We're basically spending most of our days working on current projects and trying to monitor what's going on. And so anything we can do to help, we want to try to be there for you guys. So thanks for coming today. And we'll make sure you get all this follow-up information. Love you, Dave. And thanks, Chris. And we miss you guys. And it's so nice to see all of you healthy. Please stay that way. We're with you in all of this. And we can't wait to get back to your campuses. So thanks for coming and be well. I miss you guys.